G'day guys and welcome to Aussie English. My objective here is to teach you guys the English spoken down under. So whether you want to speak like a fair dinkum Aussie or you just want to understand what the flippin' hell we're on about when we're having a yarn, you've come to the right place. So sit back, grab a cuppa and enjoy Aussie English. G'day guys and welcome to this episode of Embarrassing English Errors. Today we're going to go over the words turd and third. So this is a difficult one, I know, at least from a lot of French speakers. They have a little bit of difficulty with the th sound as opposed to t or z, which they often say. And obviously if you confuse the two words turd and third meaning a poo, a shit, a crap, it's a very benign and non-offensive way of saying a poo, a turd, and a third, which is one part of something that has been divided into three. So you could have the third of a cake or a third of a cake if the cake has been cut into three pieces. That is 1/3. And obviously if you confuse these words, it can lead to some embarrassing situations, like if instead of saying I want a third, you accidentally say I want a turd, that even if someone's going to know what you're talking about, it's going to be awkward at least for a second where they're thinking, what do you mean you want a turd? What are you going to do with a turd? And also, you could have a situation, say, someone asked you, how much of the pie is he eating? And instead of saying he's eating a third, you accidentally say he's eating a turd. So they're those sorts of situations that can arise if you mispronounce these words. So what are some other words in English that have the t sound in them? T. Similar to turd, term, Turk, turn, turf, term, termite, turban, turbo, turkey. And what are some other words that sound like third in English? Thermal, thirst, 30, 13, Thursday. So we can go through the different sounds now 5 times between thir and ter. Thir, ter, thir, ter, thir, ter, thir, ter, thir, ter. And now we'll just practice some different vowel sounds in English. I think I've got most of the vowels that are used in English, and I will go through each of these vowel sounds with th and t before them. Thigh, tie, thee, tea, thi, ti, thay, tay, tho, toe, thou, tow, thu, two, thew, tew, fair, tear, tha, tar, theer, tear, thaw, tor, thir, ter, thar, tar, tha, ta, thoy, toy, thaw, taw. And we'll just go through turd and third 10 times at the end here to practice the difference in pronunciation between these two words, one after another. Turd, third, 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 turd, third. So I might try and also describe how I'm making the TH sound, because I know it's a pretty difficult one if you don't use it in your native language. So when I say th, I'm sort of closing my mouth a little bit, halfway, and I'm pressing my tongue up and against the back of my top teeth, so that when I push air through my mouth, instead of going, you hear because the tongue is blocking most of the mouth and the air has to go around the tongue. So from going, if I push my tongue up as I do that, it'll turn into so you'll hear like a snake. So that's the th sound. Anyway, hopefully that helps. I might also just link in a video on YouTube describing how to practice and make this sound, because it will probably be a lot easier if you can see someone doing it. And yeah, don't forget that if you have any other difficulties with English pronunciation between words or just in general, send me a message or comment on Facebook and I'll try and do an episode on what you're having trouble with as soon as possible. All the best, guys. Thanks for listening to the Aussie English podcast, guys. If you haven't already, please come and join the community on Facebook at www.facebook.com/the Aussie English podcast, where I make daily posts about anything and everything related to Australia. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, then please leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher or whichever platform you're listening to it through, as it'll help the podcast grow. Thanks again, guys, and enjoy your day.